Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today I am once again joined by Issam, and once again here as well is Twan.
Hello.
We will be talking about the Ethias Cross in Bredene. Usually this race is around Christmas, but this year the calendar of course got thrown around with a new big World Cup, meaning that this race is now the third race of the season in September. It was pretty hot and pretty fast, and the men's race, what went down there, Issam?
Like you said, indeed, a fast race, and it was also not really the longest parcours that we are having on this calendar. 11 laps that the riders should be doing, and we saw a very strong Pauwels Sauzen in the beginning of the race. Ryan Kamp was good in the front, together with Eli Iserbyt, and also with Vanthourenhout and with Laurens Sweeck. But Sweeck made a mistake and crashed down in the second lap, and then for him it was a recovery ride. He had to fight his way back to the front in a way. In front, it was a bit of tactics what was playing around. Van der Haar showed himself a little bit in front, but then it was basically the Pauwels Sauzen guys that took the race in their own hands. Vanthourenhout attacked, and Quinten Hermans, in his first race of the season, was immediately kind of the guy that should, that had to solve all the problems of this team tactics. And when he closed the gap back to Vanthourenhout, it was Iserbyt that said, "Well, now it's my turn. I have to go." And Iserbyt went off. Yeah, Hermans obviously was not really having an answer on that attack. But from the back, it was actually Laurens Sweeck that, he had to change his bike after that crash, but he came back all the way to Vanthourenhout and Quinten Hermans, and he was able even to overtake those guys. And he closed down to Eli Iserbyt almost like 3 seconds or so, but he managed to get as close as he, to the win. He could see Iserbyt, but in the end, it was Iserbyt that won that race. Laurens Sweeck that got a amazing recovery race in second, and Vanthourenhout rounding up that podium for Pauwels Sauzen in third.
Well, let's talk about that attack from Iserbyt briefly. It was pretty hard to get away. Eventually, Iserbyt got away. To me, it looked like it was a bit of team play to let Iserbyt ride away.
Yeah, for sure it was team play, and it was well played as well. In my opinion, it was not the most dirtiest we have seen Pauwels Sauzen ride in a way, and especially on such a parkour, it's very fast. It's very hard to make a difference. So to have the support of your teammates, that's always what you need on such a parkour, and they played it well.
No, it wasn't a dirty tactic at all, but you could just see Iserbyt. He attacked when Kamp was leading. Kamp was like, well, okay, it's Iserbyt. I won't really do anything. And then Vanthourenhout, he took the lead, and he went through those corners just not taking any risk, not looking in any hurry. And then Iserbyt just opened a gap, and he had 10 meters. And then after that, the Pauwels Sauzen riders just did nothing. And then eventually, only when Hermans took the lead, then the chase really started. So I guess it's once again the team tactics, which, in my opinion, is a bit of a shame. I would like to see more open racing. And before that, I mean, it's just a very, very, very fast parkour, not a difficult parkour either. So very difficult to make a gap anywhere, basically make a difference anywhere. And without team tactics, I personally think it would have gone down to a sprint.
Yeah, this is just one of those courses where it's really tough to create gaps, and you see a lot of bunch forming, which we don't really see usually in the cyclocross. But that is where Pauwels Sauzen really could use their team advantage. And once you had a gap, it is possible to actually keep it because you can have more power, slightly better technique, and in this way they were able to actually make sure that it wouldn't come down to a sprint.
The parkour didn't have any major difficulties in it. However, it certainly wasn't an easy cross because, as I just said, it was pretty warm. The grass was decently high. It was very bumpy. From personal experience, I can tell those are very tough conditions to race in. But those conditions seemed to suit Laurens Sweeck. He had that crash, as Issam just said, but he rode really good to come back. He was chasing for over half the race, came back into that leading group, and then ended second, only 3 seconds down. Do you guys think Sweeck could have taken the win here?
It could have happened, but it's then again that's the tactics of the team. Like for example, if Iserbyt would have attacked, was Sweeck allowed to follow Iserbyt? Who knows? But it definitely seems that Iserbyt, was strong. But Sweeck, with that recovery coming back from the back of the pack, and then overtaking a lot of guys with a lot of traffic he had to go through. I think Sweeck definitely was maybe the strongest today, but yeah, he was just very unfortunate.
Maybe the name you guys are missing is Twan Aert. He wasn't here. He was taking a rest towards next weekend when the Super Prestige in Gieten takes place. That's the first round of the Super Prestige. Twan, what do you think about his decision to take a rest this weekend?
I think it's a very wise decision of Aerts to have taken a rest this week. It is pretty much impossible to be in first position, second position the whole cross. So at some point he was going to be held up by a Pauwels Sauzen teammate. And it wasn't going to be fun, it wasn't going to be good. So it is better to get a nice week of training in and look forward to the Super Prestige in Gieten and World Cups in the coming weeks.
Well, training, I personally think he was just chilling on the couch watching the World Championships, but nah, I'm just kidding. Of course, he probably did a good week of good training, and I think Twan Aert will be really good in Gieten and especially in those World Cups in the US. Anyway, let's run down the entire top 10 then. We had Eli Iserbyt in front of Sweeck and Vanthourenhout, the Pauwels Sauzen 1, 2, 3, 4th place for Quinten Hermans, 5th for Lars van der Haar. Very short about Van der Haar's race. He didn't find the parcours to his liking here. This is way too fast for him. Dan Soeten in 6th, Toon van der Bos, another solid result by him in 7th. Kamp in 8th, Jens Adams 9th, and Corné van Kessel 10th. Let's touch upon Quinten Hermans, who ended 4th. Very good result in my opinion for someone starting a season here, because it isn't an easy parcours to start your season with the conditions.
Yeah, as we'll get to later in the podcast as well, we saw that other people had more difficulties adapting back, especially on this parcours, as it was quite challenging, especially all those technical corners, of course, where the gaps were made today.
And Issam, what do you think about Hermans? In my opinion, he had a solid race today. 4th is definitely a good way to start your season. And of course, he had a very good road season as well, just barely missing out on that selection for the World Championships, which I'll also touch upon later. Do you think that he can move forward from here and compete for the podium regularly after this week?
Yeah, it looked very promising, especially on a fast parcours as what we had in Bredene. I was anticipating that he would be bringing up the fight to those guys, but I was just not really confident in the fact that he would be able to maintain that for an hour and be able to, to really bring the fight to those guys from Pauwels Sauzen. But he managed quite well and he held his own in the fight. So I think overall it was a very strong performance, and for the coming races, definitely someone, especially if the parcours is going to be a little bit harder, he's definitely one to watch for a podium.
I would also like to talk about Ryan Kamp. He ended 8th here, which is a bit better than in Beringen. But to me, it seemed pretty obvious that Ryan Kamp is still lacking a bit of volume. I think he started off very fast, too fast probably, and he fell back. And I think he just lacks like the condition and form to keep the pace up the entire race, which he was able to do last year.
Yeah, I think personally that this is a bit part of the process to grow and to develop yourself. So I think for Kamp, it's in a way already better than it was before. So I think he can only look to this race and say, well, I know where I have to work on. It's obviously the volume, and that's something you can train. So I don't really see that this is going to be hampering his season. And he finished around with Toon van der Bos, who finished in front of him, and with and in front of Pim Ronhaar, for example, we had a worse start of his season.
Well, I think we've had it about the men's race then, and we can proceed to talk about the women's race. Women's race where we had a couple of riders starting their season, not the least Annemarie Worst, Ceylin Del Carmen, Alvarado and Pieterse all starting their season. Twan, what went down in the women's race?
It was, just like the men's, it was quite a tough cross to actually create gaps, but they did succeed a lot more on the women's side, as early on we had a few splits with Denise Betsema and Kastelijn leading the charge, and they would go on to form the first group together with Pieterse, who throughout the cross would struggle more and more, using her technique of jumping over the barriers to the maximum to get back every single time. And eventually it would be Betsema that would drop them both, leaving her the win in front of Kastelijn and Pieterse with a very good return to cyclocross.
The women's race was, as usual, a bit more interesting than the men's race, but there isn't really a point where we can say Betsema rode away. Betsema just had more power. She opened the gap of 1 meter, and 1 meter became 2 meter, then the 2 meters became 4 meters, and then it became 10, 20, 30, 40, and then eventually Kastelijn just cracked. And it basically just comes down to Betsema being the strongest yesterday, not really any majorly decisive moments in that race, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say that is a very accurate description.
But of course, we can talk a bit longer about the race, because Betsema, for the third week in a row, not having a great getaway, meaning she needed to chase for a while. What's up with the start for Betsema? Last year, she didn't have these real good starts either.
I think that's just the type of rider she is in a way. It's some are very good in the start, some are not, and she definitely lacks a little bit of that explosive, the explosive power in a way to get away and be at the front very aggressively. Something some women have, and she kind of just lacks it in a way. So it's something to train on, but it's also something you have to work around, I guess. And so far, she's working around it quite well.
Well, it did mean that she needed to chase a breakaway of 5, Pieterse, Van Empel, Kastelijn, Van der Heijden and Vorst. Eventually she did catch them, but at the breakaway, in my opinion, Pieterse looked very strong, and basically throughout the entire race she did look super strong, and that was kind of a surprise to me.
Yeah, I was surprised as well, to be honest. This is not really the type of parkour I would associate like the strongest capabilities of Pieterse with. And she has done an amazing job, and that's upon returning to Cyclocross. It's very good stuff, and it's promising for the rest of the season.
I certainly agree, because Pieterse usually doesn't go really good on fast parcourses like this. She is better suited at muddy races or climbing parcourses, as she also does mountain biking. But very good stuff by her, and I think what we really saw as a key factor for her race was the fact that she could bunny hop the barriers, but not just bunny hop them. She actually bunny hopped them, I think, personally at the same speed as some men do. Really fast, really rapid. And later on in the race, when Betsema and Kastelijn were pacing, she was usually distanced a bit, but on the barrier she could close 3-4 seconds on them. Very, very good stuff to see that, and I think that can come in very handy throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I'm happy that there is someone that is able to take the barriers, and also with some speed. We have seen a few already doing it, but they take less speed into it, so then it doesn't seem like it's very it has a lot of advantage, and it's very good to see that it's not only the men that can do it, but also the women, and especially for those younger women and girls that are watching right now that are looking to become cyclocross riders or something. They can learn from it, and also take that technique over and use it. And one day maybe we'll see that the women, it's going to be mandatory to jump over the barriers just as the men.
I agree, because if I look at the youth races, which I have been to 2 seasons ago, you can see more and more young girls jumping these barriers. And I think that at some point, like you said, if you are a current cyclist like Alvarado, like Vorst, who run them, that you will be forced to actually train a lot on being able to jump them, because all these young kids that are coming in, they can jump them, because you also see Kay doing it, Bakker doing it now, Van Alphen doing it. The list gets bigger and bigger of the ones who do, and all these are the younger riders, whilst, with all due respect, the old generation, and then I don't mean Vorst and Alvarado, because Vorst did jump them when they were 20 in Boom a few seasons ago, but then I mean Kant and Van Looy, that age group, they refuse to put any effort into it, and I think that will cost them. Well, we didn't talk about Kastelijn, who ended second, but I personally don't think there is a lot to say about her race either. She didn't make any big mistakes, but Betsema was just simply stronger.
Yeah, I think it's very notable that, with what you said, she was just stronger. Last season we would have been talking about how she should prove her technique here instead, right? So that's also a good thing.
I agree, but I didn't see... I mean, I already said it last week in Beringen, her technique isn't perfect yet, but there have been steps made, and that's what we saw here. And I think the decisive factor here wasn't her cornering or anything. It was just that Betsema had that upper hand of 10, 20, maybe 30 watts. definitely towards the end of the race, and I think that Betsema was just the strongest, and I'm not surprised by that, to be fair.
Yeah, but there's one thing about that technique. What I want to just jump in about is because, like, when it's dry, it's easy to take a corner. It does take some skill, and there is different in speed how you can take a corner in a way. But it's not that you're gonna crash in a corner when it's dry. It's harder to do that in a way. But when it's slippery, that's where I want to look at if she improved there as well, because I think that is a different story.
I agree, and I think it's also early in the season, so we'll need to wait how things unfold towards later on in the season. But it's definitely looking good, and if it's wet, it also comes down to confidence, and she looks to have given her confidence a boost. Let's run down the entire top 10 with only Dutch riders in it today. Really boring. 1 Denise Betsema, 2 Jara Kastelijn, 3 Puk Pieterse. In 4th we find Shirin van Anrooy in front of Annemarie Vorst. 6th place for Fem van Empel in front of Aniek van Alphen. Her 3 last names in the top 10 are Inge van der Heijden, Celine del Carmen Alvarado and Manon Bakker. I would like to jump in on Shirin van Anrooy because she rode a very strong recovery race as well. She was trailing. I think she was 17th at the end of lap 1, and then she started improving, ending 4th, overtaking 3 riders who were in the original breakaway. Strong stuff by her.
Yeah, I think this is something that she had already in the first race in Beringen, and she's kind of maintaining that momentum that she had in the first race. So she just shows that it wasn't something that just came out because of the parcours that we had in Beringen, and that she's able to also in a fast parcours that it was not that difficult to be able to go and get a top 5 finish. I think almost everybody of the women was there. Only we were missing, I think, Vas and also Brandt. So it's a very strong effort from her and a very good result. And I think going on the rest of the season, it's gonna be pretty good. I think.
Well, then let's talk about the 2 big names who started their season here, Annemarie Vorst and Celine del Carmen Alvarado, who fought out a lot of battles during the 2019-2020 season. First, let's talk about Vorst. She did have a successful start to her season. I think she did a good job because it was a pretty hard parcours, as said, to start her season on. Very fast, pretty technical, very hot, a lot of acceleration. And I think really the racecraft that the likes of Betsema and Kastelijn have really gave them the upper hand. But Vorst can be satisfied in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just a good return to cyclocross. Maybe not quite what you would want, but it's the most important thing here is just to get the feel back in before we head to the next important weeks of the cyclocross season. And that is probably why she picked this cross to race, right?
Yeah, indeed. But if you look on the other hand, you find Alvarado, and she had a very tough start to her season. And for Alvarado, to me, it looked a bit more than just a lack of racecraft. It also looked that she wasn't in peak form yet. But then on the other hand, we're in September, so it's also not a shame.
Yeah, you still want to be doing better than ninth just to get the good feeling in. But indeed, as you said, it's just September.
To be honest, we got some signs already in the mountain bike. Like we already talked a little bit about that campaign that Pieterse was having. But I mean, Pieterse had a really impressive campaign on the 23 in the mountain bike season, like some solid results. While Alvarado was lacking a little bit, in my opinion. It wasn't the strongest of results, and in my opinion, when I was looking at those results, it was foreshadowing for me how the cyclocross season would start and maybe how the season will go a little bit. That it wouldn't be the Alvarado that's going to be dominating races, that's going to be winning races a lot. But it's like you all said, it's too early to say because it's we're still in September. We have to touch on October, so we will see what's going to happen, and she can surprise us.
And don't forget, Toon Aerts also had a very tough start to a season in Lokeren. The week after in Beringen, he stood there and should have won that race if it wasn't for his 2 punctures. Personally, I think that Alvarado won't be on the top of the game next week in Gieten. I think for their Betsema will be the one to beat, but we'll come to that in our preview podcast for that. Nevertheless, Alvarado, she will probably be having a bit more question marks than Annemarie Worst. We don't have any comments on the race by her, and that's mainly down to media coverage being really poor here. Nobody actually cared about this race because it's in the shadows of the World Championships in Flanders, which was basically 60-70 kilometers away. Well, now I just mentioned it, the World Championships in Flanders, we saw some good results by cyclocross riders there. We can probably start off by talking about the women's race, a name which already came across in this podcast, Capablanca Vos. What a race by her yesterday, that 4th place there, and wow, that's just a stunning performance by her.
Yeah, really showing why SD Works wanted her on that team. An absolutely amazing ride, Capablanca Vos. Yeah, just a multidisciplinary talent like we see with Van Aert, Van der Poel, and Pidcock at the men's side. Amazing stuff.
I mean, I did expect her to have an outside shot at getting a top 10, but she was really strong. There were a few decisive attacks which she was able to follow, and it really looks that work that she's been putting in SD Works is paying off. And the good news is that she said her main focus will be on cyclocross, and personally I would be pretty scared for Vos if I was one of the other cyclocross riders, because she will be racing the World Cups in America, and I have heard that she will also be riding Gieten next week, and I do expect a lot from her, certainly after this performance.
As a fan, I'm extremely excited, especially if you see the top 10 with it being 10 Dutch women. Having Vos in there, and Vos like at this level that we're seeing her operate at, even on the road, like, it will be exciting to have her back, and certainly a force to be reckoned with, of course.
Yeah, I think certainly Vos is one of the names who will put an end to the Dutch dominance currently. But if you look towards the USA World Cups, we will probably see the likes of Neff and Richards and Honsinger and maybe even Rochette, who could get a top 10 there, meaning there will definitely be more competition for the Dutch woman.
Yeah, definitely.
In that same race, a very good performance by Marianne Vos, getting second. It's less of a surprise than the 4th place of Capablanca Vos, because Vos was one of the favorites to win that race. But about Vos, I mean, we already touched upon Vos in our season preview, but maybe a short comment on the performance of Vos and what to expect from her in the field?
Yeah, it was from her. It was a strong performance, and we knew that she was gonna be a favorite if it was going to be a sprint with such a bunch. I think she was a bit disappointed because she had a chance to win, but the Italians were just very strong. So in the end, she should be happy with the second place, and that was the maximum she could do. For the field, in my opinion, we shouldn't be expecting too much from Vos. In my opinion, I don't know what her program is gonna be, and I think she's just gonna use it for training purposes, because I think the level of cyclocross at the moment with the women is just taking so many steps that it's just very hard for people to take it as kind of a side thing to half focus on. So I think she's gonna half focus on the cyclocross, and that, in my opinion, is just not really gonna give her a lot of chances.
Yeah, I think she's definitely entered a period in her career where if she does cyclocross, she really has to do it just for the joy and for the training, just to get some nice training indeed for that road season, and just to enjoy her time on the bikes, because as you said, the level at women's is getting higher and higher, and it's not like Marianne Vos is gonna improve very much, of course.
Well, there was more good news for cyclocross riders or cyclocross fans. The men's race, which was held today, was dominated by cyclocross riders. There was a breakaway of 15 riders that included pure cyclocross riders Van der Poel, Van Aert and Pidcock, and also half cyclocross riders Denning Stibar. At some point we were maybe looking at a world title for one of them, but eventually Alaphilippe was just too strong. However, Pidcock got 6th, Stibar 7th, Van der Poel 8th and Van Aert 11th. Pidcock will be undergoing surgery before starting the cross season in end November, and that is basically also somewhere where we expect Van der Poel and Van Aert return to the field. And for Stibar, we do expect to see him ride in the field briefly this winter.
Can I just say that whilst Alaphilippe was the strongest, the three cyclocross riders made a very bad decision by letting the domestiques ride.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Van Aert and Van der Poel... I mean, Van Aert said he didn't have the legs, and I truly believe that. But then again, there were some questionable decisions by letting Stuyven and Van Baarle go up the road, because there's no way they could have ever been able to follow Alaphilippe. If we look further through the results, Thibaut Nys, 6th place in the men's under 23 race, a very good performance by him. And in the men's junior race, we found Gregoire 2nd and Mikkels 3rd, two riders who have also been doing cyclocross throughout the past winter. And last but not least, the women's junior race was won by Zoe Buckstead, who rides for the Tormans team, which is affiliated to the Wanty Road team. So definitely some good results by the cyclocross riders on the Road World Championships, and we're looking forward to see them in the field fairly soon. Then a final touch-up on the US Cyclocross series in the USA, broadcasted on GCN. Personally, despite some problems in the beginning of the broadcast, I think it's a good step to see these races being broadcasted.
Yeah, it's been really nice. It was a nice surprise to turn on the Euros per player and to actually be able to watch them. It's a great development for the sport, for sure.
The first race was won by Vincent Bassans, who is already there, in front of Kerry Werner and Stephen Hyde. The women's race was dominated by Magali Rochette, who beat American champion Clara Honsinger and Caroline Mani for 3rd place. I think there's not really a lot to say about these results, except that I am pretty excited to see the USA World Cups with these results coming in. I just really hope that a couple of these riders can get in the mix, but maybe I'm just a bit too optimistic. Then some more racing results. The Radcross in Ilnau, first Swiss race of the season. Kevin Kuhn won in front of Timon Ruek and Bertolini. Women's race won by Clausel in front of Italian Realini, and Susanne Verhoeven got 3rd. Finally, the Cyclocross International de Poulzicourt in France. Men's race once again won by Joshua Dubois in front of Hugo Anin and Noël Castille in 3rd. Women's race, Amandie Foucounet won in front of Anne Morichon, and Manon Bakker ended 3rd. Issam, final comment here on Manon Bakker. It looks like she is still struggling with form.
Yeah, and I think that is a little understatement. Losing from nothing, no disrespect to the ones that she lost from, but let's be real. That's not where you have to finish in 3rd, especially if you're a promising talent in a way. So she's struggling at the moment, and I hope she can get out of that dip that she's now in.
Yeah, it is very disappointing after seeing her compete for podiums at the World Championships and at World Cups at the back end of the last year, to now seeing her do this in the preparation. Whilst, of course, September, it's not that important yet. It is, you need more of a base level than this, I would guess.
I guess it's also very important for your morale. You really want to start off your season with a good showing, get into a rhythm, get into this winning mood, or at least this positive vibe which you can go upon. But then again, it's September. Let's hope she can turn things around for herself. And I guess next weekend there's a new chance, but that might be a bit too early. Anyway, Twan and Issam, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you.
A pretty long podcast, but there was also a lot to talk about. Next weekend we will be back with racing the Ethias Cross and Molenbeek and the first round of the Super Prestige in Gieten, which we will also be making a preview podcast for. See you guys then. Goodbye.